All righty, just confirming. Oh, I gotta turn down my laptop. Just confirming, folks on WebEx, can you hear me fine? Just a thumbs up. I'm seeing thumbs up. Fantastic. I will now call this meeting of the Climate Change Advisory Committee to order. And I'm seeing some folks log on slowly, so I'll talk slowly for this first part. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton. Also a reminder for everyone in the room, make sure your devices are switched to a non-audible function during the committee meetings. Members should use the raised hand function on WebEx to advise the chair that they wish to speak to an item. If they cannot use this function, placing their hand up where it is visible to the camera will suffice. And I'm looking at you guys. Now we will do the roll call, and we'll start with myself, Ian Borsick. I'll be chairing the meeting. I'm here, and then when I call your name, please just indicate you're here either by unmuting yourself or turning your mic on if you're in the room. So Councillor Craig Cassar.
I am here.
Councillor Alex Wilson.
Here.
Councillor Cameron Kretsch.
I'm here.
Jeff Hardy.
Here.
Ditya Ketan.
Yep.
Bayode Akomolafe. Don't believe we have Bayode. Frank Lenarduzzi. Nope. Gabby Kalapos.
Here.
Mary Ellen Scanlon.
Here.
Mary Luz Velasco.
Here.
Miles Sargent. Lucia Ionotono.
Here.
Shelley Rempel. Oh. Tran Nguyen.
Here.
Matthew Tuddy.
Here.
Jesse Hudecki. Maybe?
Here.
No. Oh, okay, great. Juliana Casimiri. Nope. Adon Amer. Nope. Jordan Boyer. Jen Matthews. Zach Kuzgak.
Here.
Thanks, Zach. Sorry, I butchered your last name there. I apologize.
No problem, Ian.
Sue Heenan.
Present.
Eladia Smoke. And then finally, Tristan McLaurin.
Here.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And then the staff who are present, would you introduce your name and your position? And I'll start with you, Beatrice.
Hello, Beatrice Ikoko, Project Manager with the Office of Climate Change Initiatives.
And Linda.
Hello, Linda Lukasik, Director of the Office of Climate Change Initiatives.
And I see you're online, Trevor, if you'd like to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person, but Trevor Imhoff, Senior Project Manager in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives.
Great. Thanks, staff. Oh, and Catherine's here, too.
Yes, hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Winkleman, Senior Project Manager in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives.
Sorry for almost missing you there, Catherine.
No
I'll now
worries.
read the Hamilton Land Acknowledgement. The City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the District 1 Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase of 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island or North America, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about this rich history of this land so we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. Now, we are on to approval of the agenda. I know that there are, I'm going to be bringing forward a change, but Beatrice, are there any other additional changes to the agenda? All right, so before we approve the agenda, I would like to add a change as an amendment to the current agenda. And I'll be putting forward that we amend the agenda so that way we add discussion item 10.1A. And I'll be putting forward the following motion that the Climate Change Advisory Committee recommends that any surplus funds from Department ID 300309 be used to support and the Advisory Committee be transferred back to the Climate Change Reserve 108062, and that a copy of the Climate Change Advisory Committee minutes be sent to the next General Issues Committee meeting. Do I have a mover and seconder for this motion? To amend the agenda, yes. Lucia, thank you so much. Is there any discussion? I'm seeing none. Then I will ask everyone to indicate their vote in favor first. All in favor? Lucia was seconding it. So all in favor? I'm seeing everyone indicate online. Are there any opposed? Don't worry, Gabby, I saw that. All right, so that passes. Thank you. The motion is carried. And then moving on, are there any declarations of interest? I'm seeing none, so we'll move on. And then next up is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. Do I have a mover and seconder to approve? I see Sue with the mover. Do I have a seconder? I see Shelley as the seconder. Is there any discussion on the minutes from last meeting? Shelley, you have a comment or discussion on it? Okay, no, you're just raising your hand. All right, so then I will ask all in favor to please indicate by raising your hand. We approve the minutes from last meeting. And that is everyone we have online too. Anyone opposed? No, that's carried. Moving on, just powering through. We have no communications. We do have a delegation request. This is titled Trees in City Parks Initiative from Lee Fairbanks, and this is a delegation request for a future meeting. The reasons for delegation were to present a sustainable forestry/parks plan to save the city of Hamilton millions of dollars while improving air quality for hundreds of thousands of Hamiltonians for generations to come, fulfilling Hamilton's urban forest canopy goals while increasing biodiversity. Since this is a delegation request, if we do seek to have Lee join us at a future meeting, I'll need a mover and seconder to approve that request. And this would probably be for our January meeting or a subsequent one if it doesn't work for Lee to join us. Do I have a mover or seconder? I see a mover with Lucia. Do I have a seconder to approve this delegation request? Seconded by Matthew Tuddy. Any discussions or questions about this request? Yep. Oh, who wants to go first?
Just a quick question. If someone were to submit a delegation request and show up in person at the meeting, could that delegation happen at the same meeting if it was approved? Yeah.
In theory, yes. However, because of this request that was sent through, they're not asking to delegate on anything that's on our immediate agenda. So as co-chairs and with our staff liaison, we kind of it made sense to just approve it for a future meeting, and the delegation requester knows that as well. So they're not here waiting to delegate. So it would be for either our next meeting or a subsequent meeting that they're available for.
I'm not sure why we would entertain a delegation from Mr. Fairbanks. I've read his presentation. I've read the media coverage of this issue. I've read his op-ed piece on the matter. It seems to me this is a neighborhood park planning matter. I understand he has presented to at least some members of council. He has been encouraged to participate in the public engagement for Vincent Massey Park in 2025. I don't really think it's the committee's role to involve ourselves in this kind of matter. Anyone who's been involved in park planning knows it's a matter of balancing a variety of interests for current and future residents. I personally would prefer that he participate in the process. He's been encouraged by councillors to do that, and hopefully he will be heard and have an opportunity to present his perspective. I would, however, appreciate at some point if we could have a presentation on the urban forest strategy. Council has approved a strategy for forestation in the city, and I'd like to know what's happening and get an update on what's working and what's not for them.
Thank you for that. Are there any other discussions on this? Councillor Kretsch, I see your hand up.
Just wanted to briefly affirm what the previous speaker had said, that yes, this person had already delegated to council on the matter. So I think it'd be worthwhile before approving a delegation just to speak to the city clerk, because the way this works is that this body reports up to council, right? So if the person's already directly delegated to council and is asking for this body to recommend something to council, that might be a weird situation or might be some kind of procedural wrinkles. So it'd be worthwhile just conferring with the clerk about that before proceeding.
It's an interesting point, Race. I see Lucia with your hand up.
My understanding is that we would listen to this delegation when we would be discussing something related to the substance of the delegation. And the thing that came to mind for me was the fact that the city is currently looking at really ramping up the number of tree plantings, trying to make this process more transparent to community members and all that sort of stuff, that this might be an opportunity for us to talk to someone who's actively doing some community campaigning around a similar issue, to hear about what sort of community network they might have started, and to maybe also talk about what we as, you know, basically sort of community facing members of what the OCCI is doing on that front. I don't see a downside if it's on the agenda and it's a topic that's related, that we would talk to a member of the public, even if they've already spoken on it. I know it can be kind of frustrating to talk to, you know, council and to talk with city staff, and that maybe we would provide a little bit more community level interface for something like this. So I don't see it as a huge detraction or issue.
Alrighty, I'm not seeing any other hands up, both in person or online, so I'll call the vote. For everyone in favor of approving the delegation request, could you please indicate by raising your hands, either in person or online? I'm seeing 3 in person. And then any opposed? Just on that vote again, if you're opposed, could you just keep your hand up, please? Online. Righty. It looks like to me the motion is defeated, but I might need a confirmation of that again, because I saw some abstentions potentially. Beatrice, did you catch how many?
It was hard to tell if people's hands were up to accept it or to.
So again, I'll call the vote again just for my own clarification. I appreciate everyone's patience on this. So again, raise your hand if you are in voting in favor of approving the delegation request for a future meeting. Alrighty, and then we have 5 in person. And then all opposed, please indicate by raising your hand and just keep your hand raised. We have 2 in person, 1, 2 online. So I believe that's carried and that's approved. Alrighty, moving on. We have no delegations this time, and we have no technical staff presentations, but we will be moving on to section 10. Discussion items. So first up, item 10.1, we have staff updates. Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. 10 point. Yeah. Sorry. We put that in 10.1A. Yes. So now up. Thank you, Staff Liaison Coco. I brought forward an amendment to the agenda earlier that was approved, and I will read out my motion again. So again, the motion is, and I'm happy to speak to it afterwards. The Climate Change Advisory Committee recommends that any surplus funds from Department ID 300309 used to support the advisory committee be transferred back to the Climate Change Reserve, which is Department ID 108062, and that a copy of our minutes, the Climate Change Advisory Committee minutes, be sent to the next General Issues Committee. And I am the mover. I'll need a seconder. Thank you, Lucia. Now we can have discussion on it. And as the mover, I'll just quickly flag. As you all know, we had a lot of discussions about it. We have a committee budget. That committee budget comes from the Climate Change Reserve Fund. And basically what we're just asking right now, because we have to make a final kind of report and any surplus funds need to go somewhere that we don't spend by the end of this year, just that they go back to the Climate Change Reserve Funds. And then that it's just as a result of this vote and the result of this, it needs to be sent over to GIC for GIC to have. I know there's some other technical issues with this that maybe Trevor or Beatrice can elaborate on, but if that explanation is appreciated by everyone, maybe we can just move on to a vote.
Just a question, do the minutes from this committee meeting not go to General Issues Committee as a matter of course?
No, they do.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that this recommendation, we're moving this recommendation to GIC. Lucia?
So now just trying to understand how this differs from the direction that GIC already saw last week. I believe that the budgets were supposed to go back to the departments. So what essentially is being proposed is that the remainder of the $9,000 for the room rental that we haven't used on the room rental, instead of just going into OCCI pool writ large, goes specifically back to the Climate Change Reserve. Is that correct?
I believe that is the correct way of viewing it with the numbers for the different department IDs. Is there any further discussion or questions on this? I'm seeing none. So I'll call the question. All in favor of my motion, please indicate by raising your hand. All right, and any opposed? I'm seeing none opposed. Thank you so much. So that carries. Now we move on to staff updates. Take it away, OCCI staff.
Thank you, Ian. So we wanted to just provide a very quick update regarding the community liaison groups and just the review of volunteer advisory committees. So Beatrice sent everyone an email so that you were aware of a report that went to the Audit, Finance, and Admin Committee last week. And I just wanted to very quickly update you on the outcome there. I think in a nutshell, I can tell you that the staff report and the recommendations in it were defeated at committee. There was a tie vote. So that will go ahead to council tomorrow as part of the report from that committee. To be determined how council then deals with that report. I think one thing that we just wanted to share with you as staff in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives is that we're waiting to hear what the outcome is of that process. If you reviewed the report, you'll know that there was a staff recommendation there to revamp those volunteer advisory committees and transition them into, a number of them into what are being referred to as community liaison groups. For us as staff, moving forward, we know that this committee was just constituted in this term of council. And I think if anything, we just want to communicate the message to you that we will certainly be circling back once we know what the outcome is with that staff report. And we'll let you know what the next steps will be from there. Certainly, if we do end up in a situation where there's any sort of restructuring at some point in the future, our intention is to engage all of you in that process. But we are certainly supportive of the idea of this committee continuing to function in its current format and structure for this term of council. So I'll pause there. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Ian, but just a brief update for committee members.
I mean, first of all, I think we can just have a mover and seconder to receive this update before the discussion. So could I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Sue. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Matt. Discussion. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Lucia.
So in terms, we'll know more tomorrow about how things proceed at council. Part of the direction was to do this report back in each department thing. In the interim time, which was like a year before report back, that is a significant amount of time this committee could still undertake quite a bit of work. Will the committee be doing work over that year, or will it be suspended?
Through the chair, my understanding is this committee will continue to function. This is, you're probably aware that a lot of the volunteer advisory committees are not currently operational. I can tell you that, as staff, we advocated for this committee to be established. So this committee will continue to function. I think, again, depending on what happens tomorrow night, or tomorrow through the day with this conversation, that'll then indicate to us as staff what direction we'll need to go in and prepare for. And I'm glad that you've pointed out, there's a year there as well, so that if we do end up in a scenario where changes are coming in the future, there's lots of opportunity for us to have conversations with you about what a community liaison group could and should look like if that's where we get direction from council to go. If that's not what happens, then we'll have that conversation as well.
So follow-up question is that during the discussion at council, there was some mention that like Q1 2025, most departments would be able to get back with their liaison group recommendations, which was significantly faster than what most councillors had expected and what the report had sort of set out. Have you, as a department, heard anything about basically if this were to move forward with the liaison transition, this being much more accelerated and us not having that much runway? Do you guys have any more information for us? Because my understanding prior to that discussion coming up at council was that there was going to be a vote and it would basically indicate whether our committee ceases to do its current iteration of operation at the end of 2025 or mid 2026 when the election is. And so either way, it was going to be quite a ways from now. But given a little bit of the discussion back and forth with the staff that were presenting and talking about the ability to come back very quickly, left me wondering if it was going to be like we'd only have 3 months before all those other committees report back.
Through the chair. So my understanding is that this committee will continue to function as it's been functioning. I think probably the difference with some of the others that you're hearing about a very quick turnaround for is that they don't have an existing structure in place at all. So I would say, I think I'm pretty comfortable saying to you that we're not going to face a scenario where 3 months into 2025, there's a completely different structure in place for you. If anything, our goal here is to keep an advisory committee structure moving for this term of council when it comes to this committee. So I hope that helps.
And then I see Jeff.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'm just wondering if staff can quickly recap the recommendation, just because I know there's a few community members in the room and there might be folks online, and I don't think there was an attachment to the agenda on this. So if I understand we've got into it, but if there could just be a quick recap of what the recommendation was, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. So there were kind of specific recommendations for each volunteer advisory committee. And to be honest, in some instances, there were recommendations that some committees cease to exist. But I think for all of the ones that the staff are recommending continue to exist, the standard shift is to go to what they're describing as a community liaison group model. And I would encourage people in the community who are interested in this, and all of you, if you haven't looked at the report, there are a series of reasons why the staff who've prepared this report have made that recommendation. A lot of it is very much focused on inclusivity and creating welcoming spaces for community volunteers to engage in conversations about city issues. So that's a lot of where the recommendation is rooted. But I think at the same time, you know, there's a recognition too that the structure changes a lot, right? So I hope that helps. Not getting into the details specifically about what the recommendation related to this group says, but I think there's added language there that just speaks to the mandate of this group, and obviously that would be preserved in any transition into a different structure if that's where we're required to go. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just ask Gabby to technically take the chair while I provide a bit of my own 2 cents. Gabby, are you there to take the chair? I hope so.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, as I communicated to other members of the committee, I plan to delegate on this at last week's Audit, Finance, and Administration Committee, which I did. I was delegating just as myself. I didn't claim to speak for anyone else on this committee, but I did point out that we weren't consulted, and it was acknowledged that, yeah, we weren't consulted because this committee was convened after the review process started. I will also flag for other members who weren't able to catch the committee meeting. There was an interesting back and forth between councillors and staff who were bringing forward the recommendations where, and this is my own personal opinion, it definitely seemed like there was a difference in interpretation of where this was going between some councillors and some staff, including some councillors acknowledging that they felt like they were debating with staff over the issue. I know that there is an expectation that this is not going to just be ratified as a done deal at tomorrow's council meeting. It's probably going to be taken out and specifically debated because it did lose on a tie of 4-4 at last week's meeting, which is pretty rare. And so I will just flag that the impression I got from most councillors was that there was a recognition that perhaps these recommendations were going in such a way that the alarm and opposition I was expressing was at least acknowledged and understood in that regard. And I know that there's probably going to be significantly more discussion tomorrow as well. And I will just say, if we move in the direction of a community liaison group, we wouldn't be live streaming right now. Member of the public wouldn't be able to tune in and see what we're talking about, which is what I also raised in the meeting. And so those are just my 2 cents. I think appreciate Linda for your update on this, but again, we don't know how council's going to vote tomorrow, and we don't know exactly how they're going to vote or what they'll be voting on, because there could very well be a motion of some very new direction. And so we'll just have to wait and see. But I also tried to make sure that the committee of council also heard from me that in my own experience as co-chair of this committee, yes, there's certainly complications when it comes to obeying the bylaws and following the script and all these things. But I think having a very active group that are well engaged, having city councillors that attend the committee meetings, which hasn't always been the case for every committee over the years, and having staff that are very engaged and very interested in working with us, it goes far when that's the case. So those are my comments on that. Gabby, I'll retake the chair from you. And I haven't seen anyone else raise their hand or anything like that. Oh, Sue.
I just want to add that I found it really difficult the way we found out too. I just want to say that because we have all been, doing a lot of work, and without knowing really what's going to happen, I know that there's procedural ways of doing things, and I know I've expressed this too, but it's really hard to learn that something where I've only been on an advisory, this is my first advisory committee, but I feel like I'm able to say things or support things in a way that's transparent to people, and there's accountability there. Especially in a space when it comes to climate change and what we're trying to do, I worry. I want there to be more engagement. I want there to be the ability for equity deserving groups, people who need, to be involved. I'm just concerned still about what happens when there isn't that transparency and that accountability. And I just wanted to note that.
Thank you, Sue. I'm not seeing, back to Lucia for a second time.
I just wanted to add a few additional comments about Ian, your delegation, and comments from one of our councillors who sits on this committee, Alex Wilson, at that meeting, which was talking about the fact that our committee is not necessarily part of a one-size-fits-all solution, and that there hopefully might be space for recognition of that. Groups that are specifically meant to consult with equity-seeking groups within the city that are not tied to a specific office or a specific mandate function very differently than our group, which is tied to specific staff who are very supportive of our involvement and very, very clear guidelines. We exist to consult on Hamilton's climate action strategy. It's not a question. We know what we're doing here. And the procedural bylaw works fairly well for that aim. So I just wanted to flag for everyone else who maybe wasn't able to catch that on YouTube later, that Ian and Councillor Wilson spoke fairly well to that, and the fact that this committee functions a little bit differently than a lot of those other groups.
Thank you for that. Do I see any other hands to speak to this item? I don't. So I'll ask, we have to vote to receive the staff update. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. I think we're unanimous, but I'll ask just in case. Any opposed? I'm seeing none opposed. That carries. Moving on to item 10.2, working groups updates. And we will start off with nature-based solutions. Beatrice, so just so folks know, Beatrice is just setting up sharing her screen with us so we can all have the same reference. There we go. Yeah, and then if Jesse would like to comment on this working group. If you're there, Jesse.
Thanks, Ian. Yep. So we've, I would say, gotten off to a pretty slow start on this working group, but hopefully approving this terms of reference can get us kicked into gear. I would say we've kept the terms of reference pretty high level as well. I missed the second meeting, or second to last meeting that we had, where I think we originally discussed at least our terms of reference. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. So apologies for that. I might be playing catch up a little bit, but we basically wanted to understand how can we be most effective to city staff, and then to, I guess, supporting other working groups in terms of our mandate and what's included in the terms of reference, right? Because the last thing we want to do is make this sort of a make work type of thing. So you can see in the objectives and tasks, and then specifically in the tasks, a lot of it is understand where there's shortcomings right now. And then I suppose the terms of reference will include at a high level what we want to focus on. And then the scope of work will really dig into specifics, right? So if everyone, I suppose, could just take a quick look through this terms of reference, and if it looks good, then we can move to complete it, and then we can work on something more akin to a scope of work where we'll outline really specific sort of projects or tasks that we want to focus on. And I think, at least from our perspective, maybe one of the first things we want to do is just have a meeting with staff and get up to speed in terms of where there's shortcomings or where we can be most supportive. So I hope that clarifies things, at least from where our perspective on this terms of reference, because I'll be honest, I was having a hard time coming to terms with what exactly we were meant to actually put together here. And apologies, like I said, for missing out on that second to last meeting where I think this was discussed more.
Thank you, Jesse. So we had it before us in the screen share from Beatrice, which was the terms of reference for the nature-based solutions terms of reference and the scope of work. So thank you so much, Jesse, for that. And then moving on, we have the community engagement terms of reference scope of work. Am I correct on that, Beatrice? Yes. And then who was speaking to that one? Oh, thank you, Sue. Take it away, Sue.
I am hoping that Tran is there, though, and that Tran might want to speak to some of the tasks that have been assigned now. Tran, are you there and available and or able to?
I'm here. And Sue, is that in regards to some of the tasks that we added on?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I believe the main iteration or the changes that we did was based on some of the comments we had from staff for the objectives. It's just more in terms of the wording to try to clarify what we meant by community engagement versus communication plan versus an engagement plan. And moving on from there, we just added some several tasks and proposed timelines, but those are more up for discussion in terms of whether we see this as feasible or not. Let's see.
Yeah, it's what.
Alrighty, and then
The task.
no, yeah, thank you, Tran. Is there? Oh, yeah, you're going down to the tasks. Okay, great. Oh, and then Councillor Wilson, you have your hand up as well.
I'm happy to wait till the end if we're going to do a discussion on all of them. Mine's specific to biodiversity, but happy to wait till we're done reviewing.
And I guess like one of the crucial element was this that we defined within the task was to work collaboratively with the climate justice working group and OCCI staff in terms of kind of defining or determining which priority groups or kind of determining a trusted local organizations in which we can partner with in developing co-shared knowledge of climate justice, climate change materials, and then kind of really helping us expand the city's outreach in terms of tapping into those key target areas in terms of marginalized and vulnerable groups. So we kind of identify some examples of working with faith-based communities, hospitals, and schools as well. And a key piece would be so one of the discussion items that we had would be if we were to engage with the community and kind of establish those partnerships and work in conjunction with them where we see they have those opportunities, is to really establish a clear framework of how we go about to actually engage with them and setting out those responsibilities or criteria. What do we expect from our partners to be working on, and what are expectations for ourselves, and what's the staff will be their sole responsibility will be in all of this. Yeah, so overall, it's just our main goal is to really explore those partnerships, key partnership opportunities with trusted organizations within our community, and see whether if those opportunities do exist in the first place, and how can we really leverage those networks and to to expand our outreach in terms of our climate initiatives, so we can really reach the voices that are unheard within our community.
Thank you for that. And then moving on, we have the climate justice terms of reference and scope of work as well. Not sure who's speaking to that one. Oh, sorry, Gabby, I missed you there.
My question is more just related to process. And I know that the scope of work we need to kind of like if the scope of work for any of the working groups changes, that we need to kind of come back to committee. But do we have to do that for like changes to time frame? Like I would guess that we don't need to do that for changes to time frame, and maybe it's just an update to the committee, but it doesn't require a vote. I was just wondering for clarification on what level of change needs a new vote at committee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my gut assumption and staff's gut assumption is that timelines don't necessarily require a vote, but like scope of work, with the understanding that timelines will vary and delays will happen and things will happen faster, that isn't so much, I think, a concern. We're more concerned about what the committee's doing as opposed to when a subcommittee is doing it.
Perfect, thanks. I just wanted to get that clarification. Thank you.
No, thank you, Gabby. And then, okay, now we're moving on to the Climate Justice Working Group, terms of reference, and that was Shelley will be speaking to that.
Thank you. I think we've done a lot of work on this over the last while, and thank you to all the group members that contributed and met to talk about it. I think it's finished or very close to being finished, and hasn't changed. The mandate part hasn't changed too much since, except that we added, Adikia added some stuff on food justice, which I think is really important to include here as well. And the objectives are there. If we can just go down to the tasks, which is really where most of the work was done at our last meeting. And we tried to get a much, using the objectives and get much more specific in this area. And please, group members, if you want to jump in at any point and contribute. But I think we see our main work is really around the climate justice framework and supporting staff in the development of that, as well as the food justice, and also ensuring that we liaise and work with other groups, working groups as well, especially the communications working group, because there's a lot of, first of all, there's a lot of overlap in terms of people on these two groups, but also because these, I think we are closely tied in terms of our sort of focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion in terms of the processes that contribute to this. So I think that's kind of what we've been working on. We also have, apart from this, our group has also been working on a submission to this, the GIC on the climate reserve funding, which is going to committee, I think, next Tuesday. So we're also finalizing that. Does anybody want to contribute from the committee?
Anyone else, just feel free to unmute or turn on your mic and interject. Don't worry about me recognizing you. Anyone? I'm not seeing
I think there's, sorry, I just wanted to highlight one of the key areas that we also kind of were discussing about was in working with the governance and technical working group is to kind of really establish or create a climate justice framework or guideline, or what we call a placement in terms of what we would be using or incorporating in terms of the governance practice within our working group in the committee. So it's just it's a documentation that really highlights the key questions that we should be asking ourselves when we're talking about climate justice, and it's a living document which will be actively referring back to as we were having those key discussions on climate initiatives and helping us to make more better informed decisions. And I just want to highlight that. That's one of the key aspects of our the task that we defined.
Great, thank you guys. And then we do not have a terms of reference or scope of work from the Transportation Subcommittee yet. We have not been able to land on a date that everyone can meet. So we've gone an update on the nature-based solutions, community engagement, and climate justice working groups, terms of reference and scopes of work. Before I ask for a mover and seconder to approve these, is there any discussion or questions? And now, Alex Wilson, I'll go to you unless I see anyone else, but no, you're the first one.
Thank you. Yeah, I think just some of the questions I heard during the presentation were, you know, if this makes sense or if this is the right, and I just really wanted to reassure that I saw a lot of value in the work plan as proposed. One of the things also that the group may want to kind of keep their eyes on, that's also things that are already existing that the group may want to look at, the biodiversity action plan, if there's any specific actions that overlap with the work that they want to do, are passionate about, feel particularly knowledgeable on, those all have identified staff leads. And so that helps kind of identify, oh, who am I talking to? What am I trying to do? But I also just wanted to pass on that I believe at Public Works on Monday, there'll be a report on the garden program and how we're carrying forward with especially more gardens for biodiversity. Oftentimes, a lot of nature-based solutions get brought out as a pilot project. That pilot project, at least in the Naturalist Club's experience, is kind of a garden for biodiversity. And so just to say, I have no idea, like, won't know this report until, like, unlike anyone else, it'll be published on that Wednesday and we'll all get to see it tomorrow. But just to say that's something folks may want to look at, potentially have eyes out for.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'm seeing a hand up from Lucia and then Mary Ellen.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify, are we able to give quick verbal updates from the other remaining two groups?
That's coming up after.
Okay, after?
Yep. Mary Ellen?
I was just going to offer the comment that one of the committees that has been terminated now in the report that went to committee last week was the Food Advisory Committee, and I was co-chair of that committee. If the Climate Justice Committee wants to include food security, I will transfer, I'll get some of the reports from that other committee, including a public survey that we did about key players and key issues in the community. So I will hand that over to the committee. One of the questions that came up in our discussion, I think this was the Community Engagement Committee. There was a question around whether the non-voting members of the committee could vote if a vote was held at a subcommittee level, and we weren't clear on that.
So technically speaking, a subcommittee, like our working groups, like our subcommittees, technically only need to have one member, one voting member of the committee on them. So I would say yes. If you can have in theory a working group of 3 people and only one of them needs to be a member of the committee, I think, yeah, they can vote on it. And I would say, technically speaking, as long as the voting members of the committee are willing to bring it forward to us, then the committee votes on it as a whole. So I would say there's no specific rules, but I think we can kind of infer that if the working group decides to do something by vote, then and that's what they decide to bring forward, and the voting members of the committee are fine with that, then that's how it'll happen. I'm seeing no other hands, and so can I have a mover and seconder to approve these new terms of references and scopes of work before we move on? Oh, I see Tran and Shelley. Is that a mover and seconder? Okay, yeah, I'll go with Tran as the mover, Shelley as the seconder. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Seeing raised hands in person. All opposed? I'm seeing none opposed, so that carries. And then moving on, we have updates from the remaining groups. Is there a climate justice update beyond what we already received?
The only thing I mentioned and might have gotten lost in there was just that we're still working on the submission, the GIC submission for the climate reserve, and that's all we're doing right now. Yep.
Thank you, Shelley. And then does community engagement have any further updates?
No,
okay.
That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sue. Buildings working group. Do we have an update from the buildings group?
Hi. It's not a major one. We're just like delving into the green building standards. I'm actually going to let Lucia speak to that more because she's the one spearheading it. But that's been the main focus for us over the past couple weeks.
Lucia, do you want to jump in? Oh, okay, great. Okay, thank you. And then next up is the technical and governance working group, if there's any updates from you guys.
Yeah, I can speak to this quickly. So we've met a few times, and thanks everybody who's participated in this working group. So we've heard from other working groups that they might want a bit more structure around how to operate with voting, decision-making, things like that. So we felt it was in our jurisdiction to come up with a very simple document to kind of help the working groups operate, not meant to replace any existing documents, something just to support these working groups and their functioning. So we are drafting that and hoping to vote on it next week, and then we can send it to the full committee for your own use, and hopefully this is a useful document for all the working groups, and of course you can tailor it as needed. We're also working on helping with the targets. So this has been brought up for a few committees now. Trevor talked a lot about metrics and targets and dashboards. So we are starting that work as well. And we'll eventually solicit feedback from the entire committee. And then Lucia is going to talk about the green building standards later in the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'm not seeing any further discussion on these from these updates. Do I have a mover and seconder to receive these updates? Moved by Matthew, second by Lucia. All in favor? Any opposed? I'm seeing none. It's carried. Moving on, item 10.3, Office of Climate Change Initiatives Updates. Item 10.3A, Climate Change Reserve Updates. Am I receiving that from you, Linda? Please take it away.
Thanks, Ian. So I just wanted to give everybody a quick update on the Climate Change Reserve, both the staff report and then plans moving forward so that you're all aware of what's happening. So you're all probably aware we did get bumped from the November 20th General Issues Committee meeting, and that report is now scheduled to move forward on the Wednesday, December 4th General Issues Committee agenda. And that report will be publicly accessible tomorrow. It should be up. Usually they're up by the afternoon on the Wednesday before the meeting happens. So you can access there. Moving forward, I just wanted to update everyone on what's been happening internally in preparation for the 2025 round of, and this is focusing in on city-led initiatives that might end up being supported in the future through the Climate Change Reserve. So we've initiated a process starting with our internal director-level climate change initiatives steering committee. So they're aware, and actually there were a group of us around that table already sort of cognizant of the fact that we needed to become more strategic in how we're allocating this funding. So there's a process that's starting internally to review the application package to help to put in place, just some more strategic parameters around projects that would even be considered for support through the Climate Change Reserve. So one thing that I wanted to share that with you tonight, but also maybe get input and any opinions from Climate Change Advisory Committee members on how we might engage either you as a whole committee or as participants in relevant working groups in providing us with input on that process. So maybe I'll stop there and see if anyone has any comments or questions.
I think we have to do a mover and seconder to receive first.
Oh, do you want?
And we can do discussion after.
Okay, should I maybe, just trying to see if there's any, no, that was probably the key piece. I think the only other thing I would add, sorry, before
No, it's no problem.
that process here, is also just to let you know that we are continuing to have that conversation too. We heard loud and clear about the interest in also being engaged sooner in the process. So that's definitely part of what's being discussed internally. I think this piece is an important first step in updating that application package and hopefully getting some good input from all of you on that. So there, I'll stop there.
So I'll just quickly ask for a mover and seconder to receive the update. Sue as the mover. Do I have a seconder? I see Shelley as the seconder. Thank you, Shelley. All in favor, raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Seeing none opposed. Great. Discussion or any questions for staff? Lucia.
Yeah, firstly, is it possible to get a timeline of how this intersects with other things that we're kind of waiting to see in 2025? One of the things that we've discussed at the Technical and Governance Group is around needing to have metrics, needing to have climate justice framework, needing to have some of these other things in place prior to having a really effective way of saying, okay, if we don't have our own goals outlined, how do we ensure that projects are lining up with those goals? So would it be possible to get some sort of documentation from staff that says we are going to have climate justice framework in place in XQ 2025 and this, and that's how it's going to set us up for success in this other process? That's kind of a big piece, but that's the first one, is just to see how they all line up. The second one is there going to be a non-corporate stream for 2025? Community-based projects, either carried out by the city, but community initiated, or maybe partnered with community groups. But one of the things we did do at our last meeting was that we reviewed the original terms of the Climate Change Reserve again as a group. And we were particularly troubled by the fact that the submissions from this year fall into categories that the original intent of the reserve seemed not to be geared toward. The original intent of the reserve did seem very clearly to talk about projects that couldn't get funding from other departments, projects which would not be eligible for other levels of funding. So, for example, excluding things until they've tried applying to things like the Green Municipal Fund first and been rejected, and then we fund it, and also having a community stream. So we saw lots of these things, and those are the kind of things that we would maybe also want to see included in a report back. In addition to the timeline piece, is whether these community type streams will be present in 2025.
Sure. Okay. So maybe I'll start with that question around the community stream. So I can confirm for you that we do have in our work plan for 2025 the development and implementation of a neighborhood climate action small grants program. So that will definitely, and it will be the Climate Change Reserve funding that initiative. So our aim there is to get that program fully developed and grants going out the door, hopefully, well, for sure before 2025 is over. And I think fair to say we'll come to you as we develop that piece to get input from all of you. I think that'll be critically important. So stay tuned, that piece is coming for sure. I know your other question was around just timelines and details for some of the key pieces that we're working on. We've been engaged as a staff team in a number of strategic planning sessions looking into 2025. So we're in a pretty good position where I think we could commit to coming back to all of you in the January meeting and giving you a really fulsome update on that piece. I hear what you're saying just in terms of challenges with alignment and kind of concurrently developing pieces like the climate justice framework to help to guide work, and we know that piece isn't there yet. I think fair to say we'll be well on the way in coming to a completed product closer to the end of 2025. So I'm going to say right up front, we won't have that framework in place at the front end of 2025 to guide assessment of some of these projects. But I don't think that means we can't still have a good conversation about, you know, what we collectively think fits and doesn't fit. I think that's still something that we can do as we develop these pieces to help us do that kind of work in a more rigorous manner. And on the climate change reserve policy, I mean, points well taken, and we can certainly take that back. And I think for all of us, it's a matter of just refining, paying closer attention to the policy, paying closer attention to covering the breadth of categories that we can support through the fund. And I think working out those kinds of details. We've had lots of conversations. I just think about the review process for this last round, lots of conversations around what some staff will call the delta. Maybe it makes sense for us to support the difference. So one example on the project list was the recommended support for a street sweeper that's electric. So we're not funding the whole project, but the difference to bump it up to that option. But I think there probably are other instances where moving forward, we want to see certain practices normalized. So we wouldn't, there may be something that we funded early in an earlier round, 2023, 2024, that moving forward into the future, we wouldn't entertain, because it should just become part of how the city functions. Those are all pieces we need to figure out for sure. Yeah, so I hope that answers all of your questions, but I think fair to say I've got the whole staff team here tonight. I feel as though we'd be comfortable and ready in January to come back and, provide all of you with a grand tour of our 2025 work plan. Yeah.
I'm not seeing any other hands up. Jeff.
Sorry, just quickly. So I think I remember this correctly from the last meeting. So basically what we'd expect to see in the report that's being made public tomorrow, going to council, is the recommendations that were brought to committee. And we were talking about hopefully next year there'd be time to engage at an earlier phase when things could actually be changing. So in that case, the only way that council would then decide to approve, reject, or sort of amend the allocations as presented. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct for this year's round. We may see changes as a result of that council dialogue. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up. I would like to ask, I think we've lost Gabby temporarily. So Lucia, could I hand you the chair temporarily? Thank you so much. I handed you the chair because you triggered in my brain. I would like to just flag, I like the idea of community-directed action that isn't necessarily undertaken by community primarily. And I'm kind of thinking there's the potential of some sort of participatory budgeting type situation that could happen here, where if there was, a variety of different actions next year that could be funded, maybe there's a way the community can be engaged and prioritize and share that with the OCCI for consideration. So not only coming to us, but maybe if it was like, we have room to fund 5 projects, but there's 10 projects that kind of fit it, put it out on the Engage website and kind of do a survey and say, what would you like to see prioritized? I think could be an interesting exercise depending on how you do it and what projects you choose for that, because I know that would probably make things very complicated. So I'll leave my comments there. I'll take the chair back from you, Lucia. Thank you so much. And I'm not seeing any other questions or comments on this. So we can move on to item 10.4. Oh, yes.
Sorry, just quickly, maybe if anyone has any comments just in terms of looking forward to 2025 and that revamping of the application for city-led initiatives. Does anyone have any strong feelings about how would you be comfortable with us starting to share information with relevant working groups? How would you like us to proceed on that? I mean, we could do that. We could start doing that now, like sooner than later, if people are comfortable with that approach. I just want to confirm that you're.
Yeah, does anyone have an answer to Linda's question there? I'm seeing Lucia.
I think a reasonable way to go about, early stage consultation, when maybe you don't want to necessarily release publicly to the entire committee and put on the agenda where something is at an early stage, reflecting on the conversation that us as technical and governance co-chairs had with you and Trevor around some of the sustainability metrics. That could be a really good model where potentially you guys circulate to group co-chairs say, here's this draft stuff we've got going on. If your working group thinks that this would be aligned with your work plan, speak up, let us know, and we'll have a discussion. I think that would be an awesome way to move forward.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Thanks.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised, but I think it's safe to say, generally speaking, most people in the committee are happy if you are bringing information forward to the working groups, and I don't think anyone would be opposed to that. So moving on, item 10.4. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry, Sue.
Sorry, it was just a quick comment to say, absolutely, the sooner the better, send it along.
Okay, great. Now moving on to item 10.4. Green building standards.
I can provide an update on that.
Yes, please do, Lucia. Thank you.
Yeah, so I, as part of the technical and governance working group, working with Mary Lou's on the buildings group, and also with our whole advisory committee co-chairs, my technical co-chair, Matthew, we are all going to be meeting with OCCI staff, along with planning staff and the consultant, WSP, on December the 10th. As Matthew and Mary Lou's already gave in the working group updates, we've been working collaboratively on putting together and finalizing our recommendations that we're going to be bringing forward to that meeting to reflect the ambition and the discussion that everyone here had, as well as the presentation we made to council. So we'll have more to update at the December meeting, assuming that it falls after that December 10th. But quick reminder, I guess, to everyone who's here, who's part of either of those working groups, the next technical and governance working group is going to be on December 4th, 5th, or 6th. There's a doodle poll up for joining that, and that's where we are going to finalize that our group is happy with the recommendations that are coming forward. Buildings will probably have their own process, but we really need to get everybody's comments in prior to that meeting on the 10th.
Thank you, Lucia. Do I have a mover and seconder to receive this update? And it shouldn't be from you, Lucia. Do I have another? Do I have a mover? Moved by Sue, second by Matthew. Do we have any discussion or questions on this? And I'm seeing, oh no, Tran Ray, you lowered your hand. Is there any question or discussion on this update? I'm not seeing any, so I'll call a vote to receive. All in favor, just indicate by raising your hand. Anyone opposed? Please raise your hand and keep it raised. I'm not seeing any opposed, so that carries. Thank you so much. Moving on. Item 10.5, the Urban Boundary Expansion Framework Update. And then the Climate Change Advisory Committee comments. Who is taking us away with this one? This is just, I believe, a discussion, unless staff have anything they want to start us off with?
No, other than to say, I guess that was just added as a reminder to all of you that there's that opportunity to comment. And I know a series of, in fact, there's one happening as we all sit here till 9 o'clock at the convention center. So opportunities to engage in that process. Yeah.
I'm seeing Lucia.
I do have some information here from.
Oh, wait, yeah, before we go, sorry, thank you,
Yeah,
Beatrice.
no, I actually attended I popped in this afternoon, so, if anyone wants to look at some of the materials that are in this room here, you're welcome. But as Linda said, it's open to 9, so you still have time to zip across and look at the boards, really good boards, and there's staff there to answer questions, so it's well worth, if you have a minute, stopping by.
Lucia?
I'll comment that I did stop by before I came here, and I was unfortunately not very impressed by the fact that the online commenting in the report and the boards that are presented are not one-to-one. So just for public consumption, if people were looking at the PDF, they would see a detailed breakdown from Dillon Consulting. Parts A, B have tabular information that outlines detailed criteria, which is not reflected by the display boards there in person. There's like some summary text, but it's one board and it's pretty small. And the comments as a result are very, very high level. They don't actually talk about a lot of the details that's presented in that report, and some of them are really important. On the flip side, there's additional information about notification that is not present in the report PDF online. There's things where they're getting people to vote on, for example, an option to do a citywide survey every time that there's an urban boundary application. And I asked the planning staff who came and gave us an update last time, I didn't see that in the report. That would be prohibitively expensive. That wouldn't be a very feasible option. And he said, yeah, no, that wouldn't be a very feasible option. Why is it there on the poster board for people to come and vote on? So I was a little bit disappointed that given the low turnout, like this is our third time around trying to keep a firm urban boundary in Hamilton, steam is running out, and the provincial framework is really, really opaque, and also it's hard with Bill 185 with all these individual pieces. So I recognize that there's going to be probably limited public engagement as opposed to previous sessions, but certainly for the people that are taking the time to come out in person and the people that are taking their time to do things online, I was just wondering how did that happen and why are these things not one-to-one? So I just wanted to flag that publicly, especially if we have any people who are keeners and watch the climate change advisory. They might be the kind of people that are motivated to go to these sessions and to make their online comments. Please be advised. I would recommend doing both.
Thank you, Lucia. Any other people wish to flag this for discussion? I'm seeing Gabby is back on. Gabby, can I hand you the chair real quick? Oh, I'm sorry. Before I do that, I see Trevor has raised his hand.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Sounds weird on my headset for some reason.
You sound fine.
Okay, just to be specific, is there are the deadline comments are December 6th, and why don't I'll kindly ask Beatrice to send just a follow-up email to the advisory committee with the link to the Engage page, and that has the emails that anyone can send direct comments to.
Thank you, Trevor. And then, Gabby, I'll just hand you over the chair briefly so I can just provide a comment. We are the City of Hamilton's Climate Change Advisory Committee. This is unfortunately well out of the scope of where our influence can have any effect, including the City of Hamilton's influence as well. But I think that just on the record, I think it's worth putting down that this is a good example that for all of us as committee members, we need to be aware of the fact that there are political forces in the country that are well above everyone's level of influence right here that will certainly, even if everything goes ideally for us on this committee, upend and completely negate potentially what we may have to do. So I think it's just worthwhile for us to keep that in mind, and especially for the Community Engagement Committee, and when we continue to move forward, that as members of this committee, we are mindful when we engage with the public as individuals and as members of this committee that we remind the public of this, that there are decisions being made by other levels of government that completely can upend everything that it happens at this committee, and it's detrimental and it's horrible. But at the same time, I think while we may not have room within the power within this room, we certainly can potentially collaborate together outside of it. Is where I'll leave those comments, and I'll take back the chair from you, Gabby. Thank you. And I see Marielle. Oh, okay. I was mistaken. Sorry. And then Lucia, you have one final comment?
I do, which is that the urban boundary issue is one of the reasons that, again, just reminding folks that we are bringing forward some ambitious low-density targets in green building standards is that we are expecting, unfortunately, low-density sprawl, at least some of the applications to go through. And that's part of the reason why it's important that our group make sure that we contribute as fully as possible to making sure that those do not lock in future emissions.
Thank you for that. Moving on. We have item 11. We have no motions. There was no presentation though. So do we still move if there's just a discussion on a topic? Do I have a mover and seconder just to be real safe? Matthew, Sue, all in favor? Could I see hands approving us receiving this? Any opposed? Seeing none. It's carried. We have no motions. Are there notices of motion? I'm seeing none. And we have nothing else under private and confidential. So that means, do I have a mover and seconder to adjourn?
We want to discuss meetings for 2025.
Oh, yes.
I didn't have that. I realized now.
Can I get a quick mover and seconder to approve an amendment to the agenda for a discussion about meetings in 2025? Moved by Lucia, second by Sue. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed. All right, thank you. Beatrice, if you would like to get us started on this discussion.
Well, yes, sure. I find Tuesdays seem to work for people nicely for most of the, so do we want to continue meeting on Tuesdays? And then would it make sense for me to propose some dates and people could put them in their calendars and decide, you know, and be prepared that way? Is that something that, you know, that we want to do? So the next meeting would be, okay, so are we meeting in December? Number one, I think probably not. Right? Some people are nodding, I don't know, like we don't have a December date.
Well, I think I'll speak into the mic. I think it slightly depends on what happens tomorrow, right? If there's something that we don't anticipate, certainly my thought would be that maybe we leave some options open because it may trigger a discussion. It might be a short meeting, but it may trigger a discussion for our group to get more updates and see what's going on.
Okay. Okay. So we can keep December, you know, optional. And then for the 2025, so we've met 6 times this year, which is bravo, everybody, because we started, given that we started in April, that's pretty good, right? Again, in terms of reference for us is that we need to meet at least 4 times a year, and we can meet as many times beyond that. It's up to us. So if for January, would people feel comfortable more towards the end of January? Again, maybe if we know, if we are meeting in early or at least mid-December, we don't know yet until tomorrow or what people want to find out, but would we like to kind of work on some dates now, just have some general guidelines, right? Just to put in our calendars.
Just my thought is I wouldn't want to skew like the opinion of dates with everybody who's here. Maybe folks who aren't here, Tuesdays don't work for them. So maybe it's worth sending out like a doodle poll or something just to get everybody's opinion, given the turnout today is pretty low. And yeah, I think later in January is definitely better for people typically.
Okay, so I'll commit to sending out a doodle poll, sending out some potential dates, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, me and Gabby can put together an updated version of the kind of availability sheet that we use that, I mean, Tuesdays were overwhelmingly the only days that work for everyone. But schedules also change. And so we could certainly put that together, share it, and then also just confirm if we'll be meeting in December as well by email. Councillor Wilson, I'm seeing your hand up.
Just another FYI that also on the council agenda tomorrow in the AFNA report. Oh, so in the same report is the council schedule for 2025. And so if that's approved tomorrow, then just an like the room bookings, all those types of availabilities, all the things related to the city's functionings, which doesn't impact most volunteer members, but may impact some of Beatrice's bookings, that hopefully is approved tomorrow.
So it sounds like what we'll be doing is staff will collaborate with the chairs. We'll just confirm everyone's availability for the next year. We'll confirm December meeting by email. And then moving forward, we'll look at later January when we meet in January, because I think safe to say we're going to be meeting in January no matter what. And then beyond that, we can have a discussion of dates once folks have either confirmed Tuesday still work or they don't. All right, thank you, everyone. Can I have a mover and can I have a vote to receive this discussion? All in favor, because we did a mover and seconder already. All right, any opposed? None opposed. Do I have a mover and seconder to adjourn?
Before you do that, I wasn't qualified to vote on the delegation question at the beginning of the agenda, so my opposing vote should be struck.
All right, thank you for that.
If it was counted, I assume it was.
No, thank you for that. Do I have a mover and seconder to adjourn? Seeing Sue, I'll give it to Tran, so that way we have some balance between virtual and in person. Everyone's in favor? Any opposed? I see none opposed, so then we adjourn. That will end this meeting of the Climate Change Advisory Committee, and thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, we're going to stop that.
Bye, everyone.